Matthew Perry's memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, is out now, and it has a lot of insights from Perry's life and career, and of course, Friends. In this video, we're gonna talk about some stories of Bruce Willis, who had a brief guest role on the show. As one of the hottest stars of the time, he was a big get for the show. Let's dive into it. Starting off, Perry and Willis first teamed up for The Whole 9 Yards. Released in the year 2000, this was one of Perry's first major roles, away from Central Perk and Apartment 19. It was a comedic crime film that saw Perry and Willis playing the Tulip, a notorious criminal, and Dentist Oz, respectively. When the two unwittingly become neighbors, Oz reveals the identity of their mobster next door to his wife. This kicks off a string of hijinks that was even followed up by a sequel that saw both of them return. While the movie didn't get rave reviews, it had Matthew Perry and Bruce Willis, the latter's comedic abilities often being underestimated. There was enough to the movie that, in 2004, there was a sequel titled The Whole 10 Yards, with both stars returning. So the movie was a barrel of laughs, but going off Perry's memoir, it wasn't a major event in his career. In a way, it was an attempt by him to build a solo career, while Friends took a minor hiatus. The venerable sitcom had to end sometime, and the cast was thinking about what they might do after it finally wrapped. Anyone who has followed Friends for a long time knows that Matthew Perry struggled with addictions to alcohol and drugs throughout the show's run. Those addictions led him to bond with Bruce, and the two became good friends on the set of the movie. Now, it might be a surprise to some that Bruce Willis had a dalliance with drugs. Sure, no one in Hollywood is a stranger to drugs, but Bruce Willis's name doesn't show up in lists of Hollywood's legendary drug users. You know, the sort of lists that would have Perry's name on them. Since Matthew Perry knows a thing or two about drugs, he explains why Bruce doesn't have stories like those. In the memoir, Perry draws the line between addicts like himself and partiers like Bruce Willis. Partiers can apparently do all kinds of drugs in the mood, like at parties. But once the party's over and it's time to go home, they can forget about the drugs. They don't have a need for drugs, and they can function without them. Addicts, whose condition is even defined in medical manuals, are people who cannot go about their day and normal lives without drugs. During one of the Whole 9 Yards parties, Bruce told Perry that he didn't think the movie was going to work. Perry, on the other hand, genuinely believed in the flick. The two made a bet. If the movie was a hit, Bruce Willis would have to do a guest role on Friends. While the movie didn't get anyone any awards, it did some serious numbers. A $106 million gross was kind of a big deal for a comedic movie at the time, and it was America's #1 movie for 3 weeks straight. Clearly, Perry had won. Moving on, Friends fans will know exactly what role Bruce Willis played. The actor rappelled into the show's 6th season as Paul Stevens, the dad of Elizabeth, who happens to be the student at New York University that Ross had a super inappropriate relationship with. His guest role on the show lasted for 3 episodes, in which Paul mercilessly takes Ross down for dating someone so much younger than him, before himself starting a relationship with Rachel. Just like in The Whole 9 Yards, Bruce Willis proved himself to be a comedy gem in disguise. He looks like Paul McLean, and he bullies Ross like him, but he turns out to have a bit of a soft side. Ross catches him singing and dancing and blackmails him into accepting his relationship with his daughter. And Rachel gets him to open up about his chicken boy trauma and other emotions he'd been bottling up. Friends had some amazing turns from guest stars, but Bruce Willis as Paul is a top 10 character at least. The industry apparently agrees, as Bruce's performance as Paul earned him an Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actor. And it turns out we should thank all the wonderful people that kept The Whole 9 Yards at #1 for 3 weeks for getting Bruce to lose that bet. Let's return to the set of The Whole 9 Yards now, specifically the parties that took place. Despite the fact that Matthew Perry was a full-blown heroin addict, he quickly realized that he was a lightweight compared to Bruce. The pair used to get drunk and buzzed nonstop every day, which Perry found hard to keep up with. But because Perry thought Bruce Willis was so cool, he was determined to keep pace with the actor. His efforts to keep up with his co-star led him to acquire a stash of Xanax pills, which are a benzo that's used for its calming effects, but can do serious damage to your central nervous system if you abuse them. But Perry had a pretty pressing reason for it. In his own opinion, he could get sloshed with Bruce and the others all night long, and then just pop a Xanax to fall asleep. If that sounds like a terrible pattern of behavior, it clearly is. And it had disastrous consequences for Perry, who was on the road to recovery from his addictions before, but wound up relapsing pretty hard because of his time on this set. Not that Perry holds that against Bruce or anyone else. He acknowledges in his memoir that he made the decision to dive straight into a pile of drugs just so he could be as cool as the man himself. All that being said, there was a sweet note to their relationship. Perry also writes that at the end of those boozy nights, the two of them would stay up and talk about anything and everything. Just like Chandler and Monica, he writes that Willis was a man with a good heart and that he was selfless and caring. He was also as great at parenting as he was at acting. In all, just a great guy. A lot of this information comes from a chapter in his memoir titled Bruce Willis. It's a big deal that Perry dedicated a whole chapter of his life story to one man, but he makes it clear that Willis absolutely earns the honor. Willis lacked a lot of the hoity-toityness that we generally associate with big-name stars, and his charm and good nature were enough to take over any room that he was in. He was more than happy to laugh at every single one of Perry's jokes, and he seemed to enjoy having a younger guy looking up to him and joining him in throwing back drink after drink. The descriptions of their relationship remind us of when Joey and Chandler wanted to impress Richard, played to suave perfection by Tom Selleck. Finally, what are the two friends up to now? Much to Perry's disappointment, once filming wrapped on the whole 9 yards, the two drifted apart, and though they got to reunite for the whole 10 yards, they drifted away once more after that movie was done filming. Willis was at the tail end of a very fruitful career at the time, though he didn't know it yet. He would take part in some of the greatest films ever made, including Moonrise Kingdom and Looper. He'd also make some extremely ill-advised sequels to his GOAT flick, Die Hard. He eventually transitioned to doing direct-to-video action movies that only featured him for like 15 minutes each. Stories started to emerge from the sets of these movies that the actor was behaving erratically and struggled to actually do the work of acting. In March of this year, the actor's family revealed that he suffered from aphasia, a mental health condition that affects his ability to speak or understand other people's speech. As of March 2022, Bruce Willis is retired. He had 8 movies in the pipeline at the time, though as of this video, the last 3 of them are coming out. As for Matthew Perry, after the whole 10 yards, Perry got involved in a handful of movies, but his big screen career kind of fizzled out. That same year, Friends came to a sad close, and while Perry has had guest and recurring roles since then, his only regular roles were on Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, Go On, and The Odd Couple. He's also engaged in some political activism and philanthropy, helping out other addicts. But the fact is that his own relationship with narcotics has been pretty complicated all the while. In the book, Perry also mentioned being saddened by Bruce Willis's aphasia announcement. He offered an olive branch to the actor and promised to keep him in his prayers, which is more than he did for Keanu Reeves, but that's a whole other video. That's it for us today. Have you read Matthew Perry's memoir? What did you think of it? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.